the Medicaid bias for covering institutional services as opposed to community-based services like a caretaker or somebody to drive you to work. Because now under the law, just to give you a way of background, if you are an individual with a disability and you want to live in a nursing home, Medicaid, no matter what state you're in, will cover it. But on a state-by-state basis, they won't cover, a lot of states won't cover your ability to live in the community, like by having an aide or by having other services that are considered community-based services that allow the person with a disability to live in the community. So this act would say no matter what state you're in, Medicaid has to cover those services. I just want to get your thoughts on that law and that concept and whether you would support it in Congress.
I would definitely support it in Congress. I saw the video that was going around. I saw the filmmaker and his child,
yes.
And it was heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because he started to deteriorate. His condition started to worsen, and I really feel there was a correlation there between all he was separated from his wife. She moved to I can't remember.
It
was Texas, right? Yeah, Texas. And because he got good health care in New York City, he couldn't move to Texas and be close to his son. So he just never saw his son anymore, and his son was his world, and rightfully so. That should never happen again in the richest country in the history of the world. That kind of thing should never happen. I mean, and it's just another example of how we're talking about a civil rights violation here. I mean, his civil rights is to be afforded the health care that he needs to live, just to exist as a human being in America, is being taken away from him because he crossed an imaginary line. It's still the same country. We're still in America, but you can't go from New York to Texas and have the same kind of care. That can't happen. And it's, I feel like all three of us will agree on this one, topic, because you can't have a for-profit healthcare system in this country. You just can't have it anymore. We've noticed, we've spoken about it. Not everybody has the same morality. Not everybody's going to do the right thing. And it's sad that we have to make them through legislation. It's sad that we have to create laws that give everybody equal liberties and equal rights. We can't profit anymore as an individual off of people who are suffering. We can't profit anymore off of somebody who needs help. How is this happening? I would support any and all legislation that gives people with disabilities, people with mental health problems, people who are elderly, anybody who feels like they're not given an equal opportunity in a country that's supposed to be about equal opportunity. I would support that legislation. And I will fight. If I was in Congress, I would vigorously fight any legislation that tries to take away the rights of an American citizen for profits. And that's really what we're talking about here. It's a sin. How can we go through this? I mean, the fact that we're even talking about it, it's 2018. It's time to progress. I consider myself a progressive. I'm not a Democrat because I don't like the party system. I think it's corrupt. But I consider myself a progressive because in my mind, if you're not progressing, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're not moving forward? If we're not happy in a situation and yet we keep allowing it to happen through either voting or from our own complacency, what are we really doing? There's still people suffering. There's still people that need help. And I would support any legislation that helped them.
Well, as a physician, and more importantly as a human being, I'm in total support of the DIA. The bottom line is that I don't think people with disabilities can depend upon the charity of strangers. I think we need laws that have teeth to them. and hold violators accountable. What's the sense of having laws if they're not doing what they were intended to do? And getting back, as a physician, I saw a beautiful young woman of 25 who was happy and coping with her multiple sclerosis. But then she was warehoused to a nursing home. And this 25-year-old woman was in a room. I was doing a rotation, my internship in geriatrics, and at the geriatric hospital I rounded on this young woman. And it was so sad seeing her in this environment that her friends couldn't easily visit her anymore. And she said she had to do it because they were not going to provide the financial incentives to allow her to continue where she was happy and thriving. And within the year, she did pass away. And I am convinced that had she not been warehoused by a gun to her head, that if you want to be cared for, you go into this nursing home, I think she'd be alive and happy to this day. So that's a very personal experience that really helped me more fully appreciate this question.
Thank you. And John?
Well, again, it comes down to everybody's needs are different. And that's the problem that I always see when you put too many laws in, and you leave the government in charge. I believe heavily in charity. And that's why, Murray and I and the other libertarians, we've said that dollar for dollar, to put more money in charities' pockets and be able to help groups as any group. You may not want to take the New Jersey, I forget what they call it, the transport service that they have.
Access Link.
Access Link. You may not, maybe you want to take an Uber. You just think it's cooler. You like that kind of freedom. You should be able to have that freedom. And sometimes when you get government involved, they don't let you have that freedom. Yes, maybe, you have profit-making industries can be greedy and limit things. The government can too. So if you're going to be putting laws in there, you got to make sure they're very, very general. You don't want to infringe on somebody's rights and allowing them to be who they are. If they want something in particular, they should always be able to do it, because happiness for each one of us is something different. And that's the thing that you can't just throw a blanket over. I would rather see, that's why I'd rather see charities handle it. I look at Sister Jean's. Now, Sister Jean's, you remember that. I'm sure you guys have met her before she passed away. But by having something like that as opposed to a federal program and a warehouse, you had somebody that cared about each and every person in there, in their own way. Now, maybe they're not disabled, but certainly everybody had issues in there. And she knew, she was able to get, and her and Reverend Scotland and the other people that were there were able to work with each person